Thank you very much, Jim. Oops, got it. All
Yep,
right.
go ahead.
Thank you very much, Jim. That was a very kind introduction, and I sure appreciate your spearheading and making this meeting happen. And I'm very thankful to you, Tina, for being the technical wizard behind it. Although, as we said earlier, we haven't quite proven that yet, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, it was obviously there's a relationship I've had with Hillfield, which was my original school. And they've been supporting us since the year 2000. But the Glassco committee, as it was formed, really didn't get started until Sean Cameron was on the scene and took over the committee at Hillfield. And we did wonderful things that year. So he is definitely a super salesman. In fact, I should just digress. When he went to university, he called me one day and he said, we're entering a contest. It's across Canada, and it's with a TELUS. And do you remember the ads? Goo-doo, goo-doo. Do you remember those? Well, that was who it was with. And I said, Cameron, that's terrific. If there's anything you need, let me know. So time went by, and he called and he said, Colin, we won. And he said, we've got the opportunity of sending the money to whatever charity we want. And I said, can you think of any? Anyway, he arranged for the check to come, and that was $35,000. So Sean, you were definitely a super salesman at that point. And now knowing that you're working for Starbucks, I'm looking forward to the next check. So get to work. Anyway, I did prepare this DVD, which we'll look at in a minute, which was prepared for Hillfield, sort of highlighting the things that they were doing. And but just before we start, people always ask me, how in the world did I ever pick Zambia? And I'd love to be able to say that I listed all the countries and pros and cons and needs and made a very astute decision. But really what happened was that when I was setting up the foundation, I of course wondered what I was going to do with it. And a number of people had said, if you're blind in a third world country, you really don't make it. So I decided that I should get involved with eyes. And so in Calgary, there's an organization called Operation Eyesight. And I went to them and I said, here I am, I've got a little bit of money, what can I do? And they said, we have a doctor in Zambia. And I was saying to myself, I wonder where that is exactly, who goes into the bush and does these eye clinics. And I thought, what an adventure that would be. So I said, I'll do that. But of course, I'd like to go over and experience it. And so that was all set up. And I landed or arrived in Zambia in the far eastern part of it. And this remote clinic was on the western part. So we actually flew across in a small airplane. And I'm a pilot. So of course, the trip started out really well. There I was doing what I love to do, flying. Anyway, on that trip, and this is where I'll pause because the DVD sort of picks it up. So remember, I've flown across, I'm in this very remote area, and Tina, push the button.
Okay, so I have Paul on standby just in case this doesn't work, everyone. But here we go.
Hi there, everybody. I'm delighted to send you this updated video of the work we are doing together in Zambia. And just because some of you perhaps haven't met me before, I'm Colin Glassco, and the foundation I set up, the Colin Glassco Foundation, was started in 1996. I'm often asked, how did I or why did I start the foundation? The reason being that I had retired early and needed something to devote my time to. And frankly, I was looking for a big adventure. And so through Operation Eyesight, I found myself in Zambia, and we went into the bush to examine some children for trachoma. And incidentally, if all of you, if Hillfield Strathallan was located in the Gwembe Valley, half of you would have this eye disease, which causes blindness. On that trip, we also did a cataract surgery on a little 5-year-old boy who had been blind from birth. And 2 days after the operation, we took the bandages off, and there was this little boy looking around the room. It was amazing. So that was the moment when the whole project became not only an adventure, which has always been, but also something that was doing some good. If I thought about what was the work we've done that was most impactful, It would be difficult to answer that. Building a school, building a clinic, an immunization program, these are all things that have a wonderful impact. I think probably the most meaningful things that have happened are the things that happened when we were in the valley, and I'll give you 2 quick examples. At one school, we found this little girl, about 14 years old, with an arm missing in her sleeve. And it turned out that she had been in a bad fire as a child, and her arm was actually fused to her body. And the doctor afterwards had said she probably wouldn't have made it. Anyway, amazingly, the hospital we worked with in Lusaka is where the only plastic surgeon in Zambia was working. And he, over a series of operations, was able to return this young girl to be able to use her left arm. The other example was at another school, and there was this little boy about, maybe 9 or 10 years old with a missing leg and a crutch. And this little boy was flying around the school. It was amazing to watch him. But Debbie and I, and Debbie Norman, as the director of the foundation with me, said, boy, maybe we should see if we could arrange a leg for him. This we have done. So as I said, the things that we are doing, the standard things that we're doing are very impactful for sure. But it's those little things that occur and just become an opportunity for us that are really terrific. Just as a bit of an aside, when we first arrived in the Gombe Valley, there we were in our vehicle, and very few vehicles, by the way. And we would be driving along, and normally we would have some things in the vehicle, such as toques or t-shirts or something. And if we spotted a family walking along the side of the road, if we stopped, they would take one look at a vehicle, which they've never really seen at all, and with a couple of foreigners in it, and it's stopping. So they would scoot away into the forest to protect themselves. Now, when we're there, because we've been there for 20 years, the people run the other direction. They see our vehicle and they come running up to say hello and see what's around. A lot of you will know that Hillfield Strathallan has been helping in Zambia over the years and have done some wonderful things. So I thought I would just, as a reminder, show you some of the highlights that we've done together. By golly, your second education center is underway at a wonderful new clinic called Ntanga. Just see it over behind us. And this is Debbie Norman, who I think you've seen before. So Debbie, a very important director of the foundation.
Hi everyone, you should be so very proud of this contribution. It is really goes a long way to public health and lots of support for the people. So thank you so much. The clinic is very active. It's the official opening today, and we are thrilled, as are the communities. So thank you very much.
To all of you at Hillfield Strathallan, one of those latrines was built in your honor to thank you for all the wonderful support you've given us in Zambia over the years. So your latest project, everybody, is a mother's shelter. And this wonderful addition to a clinic allows the mothers to come up in plenty of time, which of course eliminates all the dangers of having the births at home or on the path. So this is in fact your mother's shelter. And we've been very lucky in that we've been able to not only build this shelter for them, but equip it so they're comfortable. And I should point out that the people in their homes are sleeping usually on a grass mat. And so for them to come into a building like this with actual beds is amazing. The second thing that's really amazing is the fact that because we have solar operated water system, we're able to put in a flush toilet and a shower for the ladies, which is wonderful. And the result of this wonderful mother shelter is, of course, the fact that there are very many grateful mothers with their new babies. Debbie and I are very often presented with some wonderful gifts, which really are gifts for the donors in Canada, but we just happen to be there to receive them. It's lots of fun, and the gifts themselves are very meaningful to the people. We are going to be doing a number of projects in the Gwenby Valley this year, and the one I wanted to particularly talk to you about is a small irrigation system for the farmers. And this operates as a drip system, and you can see from the picture there's a bucket, and then the long lines run out, and the water then slowly drips out and provides constant irrigation. I originally asked, would one of these farmers get enough food from this to feed their family? And the answer I received was, well, it's really being done to provide them with a cash crop, which they then can sell, and that income can be used to look after their basic needs. For example, school uniforms. So everybody, once again, thank you very, very much for everything that we have done together. It's been wonderful. And I'm looking forward to working with you again this year on this small irrigation system for the farmers. And I should just remind everybody that luckily I'm able to cover all the administrative costs myself. And so 100% of your donation will go directly to the project, which benefits the villagers and their children. So thank you very much.
Well, there we are. We got through it, Tina. Well done.
Hey.
So I just thought I'd just continue the history just very briefly. So at that initial meeting, we were in the middle of nowhere, really a long way from Osaka. And I said to Bo, and his name is Bo Tang Wayafi, and everybody calls him Bo. I said to Bo, you know, if you can arrange for those operations, we'll somehow pay for them. At that point, I had some business cards and $10 in the bank, but I figured that should be all right. We should be able to do something. But I said, we have to get something closer to Lusaka. So if anybody came over, we would be able to get down there easily for them. And the Gwenby Valley was picked. There was lots of trachoma, and it was about 3.5 hours out of Lusaka. So quite reachable by everybody. So we began to try to eradicate trachoma. And by going into the villages and speaking to the villages, examining them, identifying that somebody's got coma and providing the medicine. But the main ingredient that was needed to make this work was water. And drilling a well was well beyond our means. But in the year 2000, we got a big donation, and we were able to drill 10 water wells that year. And so we drilled 10 that year, 20 the next year, 40 the next year, and on it went until we reached. We've drilled about 500 wells, over 500 wells in the Gwenby Valley. In fact, at one point, Debbie and I said, sort of secretly to each other, wouldn't it be great if we could give everybody water in the Gwenby Valley? And this we did. So the next big thing that happened, I think I would say, is that I was in the Ministry of Health's office in the Valley, talking about the trachoma program, and he got up and he brought over a binder and gave it to me. He said, have you ever thought of building a clinic? Well, I can tell you, frankly, no, I had never thought of building a clinic. How would we do it? Anyway, I looked at the cost and it was within our means. So I said, okay, with a little fear and trembling, let's build the clinic. And so we did. And interestingly, the government did the building, and it took them 2 years to do it. So it was a very painful process. Since then, we've teamed up with a local builder. He now builds the clinics, and we build 8, and he does them in 3.5 months. So the process, by the way, of building a clinic or a school, because of course the Ministry of Education heard about these clinics and said, we want in on this. And so we started also building schools. The process would be, is we would go to whichever government was involved and say, we've got some money for a clinic. Where do you like it? Where would you like it? And they would tell us, and they'd explain why it was a really good location. We then would go to the actual location and meet with the headmen and the village elders and say, would you like a clinic? Because it involved quite a bit of sweat labor on their part. Well, of course, their answer was, yes, please. And so that's in fact how we actually got into all these areas. So we ended up, as I mentioned, building a bunch of clinics and schools. And the idea was that we would build the clinic to the government's specifications, and we would turn it over to them, and they would equip it and put the doctors and so on in, not doctors, but the clinical officers in, and maintain it. Well, the government has very, very little money. So in fact, we soon learned that if we're going to build a clinic, we might as well be ready to equip it as well. So that's in fact what we now do. So the other big thing that happened, scary thing that happened, is as usual, we were meeting with the people that implement our projects in Lusaka. And, you know, what would we do next year? We were sort of kicking around a few ideas. And one of the fellows said, we need to build a bridge. And again, I thought, my goodness, you know, how would we do that? Well, luckily, Debbie, bless her heart, found an organization called Bridges to Prosperity. And by golly, we built that bridge. And the reason it was such a very, very needed item was that the school was on one side of the river, 75% of the children on the other side of the river. And in the rainy season, it was impossible to cross the river. You might say, well, why didn't we build the school on that side? Well, there's all sorts of things that, you know, you need to get over to build it. And so that's why it was built. So we decided to build this bridge. So one day the builder called and said, we're really doing well. But he said, Colin, there's another whole important reason why this is such a good deal. Yes, it gets the kids to school, and that's what we're trying to do. But he said the mothers, pregnant mothers, will come down to try to cross the river to get to the clinic to have their babies, can't get across, and end up having their babies on the side of the river. So it's with a high mortality rate. So that was just another check mark. Sadly, 2 years ago, there was a huge flood, and a tree came charging down the river and took out the bridge. So it was, you know, a huge event for the community, because it transport back and forth was going on a lot. Anyway, we of course said, I guess we should rebuild that bridge. And so we've had various meetings, and I keep saying to them, I just want you to make sure that you build this bridge 10 feet higher. And anyway, it's underway. So that bridge will be reconstituted shortly. So that sort of summarizes all the things that we're doing in the Gombe Valley, but we do have a few other projects I'll just touch on. We have an immunization program in the valley. So twice a year, the government goes out and immunizes for measles and diphtheria, and there's all sorts of other medical things that they look after. And amazingly, according to their records, they get an almost 100% coverage. In fact, I sort of think maybe we should bring them over to Canada to look after our vaccination program out here. They might get everybody vaccinated. Anyway, so the immunization program is great. We worked with the orthopedic hospital, and the orthopedic hospital, just as sort of a side story, was run by this amazingly wonderful Italian sister, Sister Egidia. And she was just wonderful, and we really hit it off. And so every time I went over, of course, we went to the orthopedic hospital because there's lots of kids being operated on, and we had our stuffed animals from Hillfield and elsewhere. And she would always say, "No, you must come for dinner." And so every year I would go over to the convent, we'd have dinner, and that would, you know, a spaghetti or whatever. Anyway, on this one trip, I saw they were building something, and so I said, "What's that?" She said it was a mother's shelter. And if you think about it, very, very necessary, because the mothers will bring in their children to be operated on, nowhere to sleep. So they sleep under the beds in the ward, which is not really good for the being safe from a health standpoint. So this mother shelter. And I thought, oh dear, this would have been perfect for the Glassco Foundation. Anyway, as the time went on, I discovered that in fact, it was being built by Sister Judy by reorganizing certain other things, scrimping here and there within the hospital to get enough money to do it. Anyway, so as usual, dinner was on. But this time, she picked me up with their controller, and we sat down at this table in this restaurant, and Sister Judy slid across the table a letter to me, and it said, with the Glassco Foundation, equip this mother shelter with beds and so on. And I already knew what I was going to do. Anyway, I looked at the letter and I sort of shook my head. I said, "Oh, Sister Judy, you know, I don't know." And then I slid the letter back to her and I said, "Oh, Sister Judy." Now this me being a brat took about 15 seconds, right? So poor old Sister Judy was in the dumps for 15 seconds. I said, "Here's what we'll do. We'll build it for you. We'll equip it, and we'll cover the operating cost." It was I think it's really, you can see I'm getting a little emotional. It was the finest hour. I think that probably if I summarize again what's so good about doing this sort of thing, as you all know, and that is giving away the money. Anyway, it was an amazing event, and so there was a mother shelter. So what we're sort of thinking about now with the foundation, and you saw a bit of it right at the end of the DVD, is to look at the various infrastructure we've got and try to build on them. And so wells, we'll put in as many of these agricultural systems as we can, the irrigation systems. And then the hospitals or the clinics that we've got all through the valley, there's 8 of them, and the government's got about another 7. So there's 15 or 16 clinics. We do, and they have no eye care whatsoever through the valley. As you know, we do eye clinics at the Lusac Eye Hospital, and right at the beginning, you saw the one that Hillfield did. And once a year, a team goes down into the valley and operates on as many people as they can, and they look after about 25 or 30 people out of a population of 65,000. So we said, okay, look, why don't we set up a room in the local hospital down there that's devoted to eyes? Why don't we then bring in all the clinical people from all the clinics and teach them some of the basic, being able to identify some of the basic issues. And so that's underway, and it'll hopefully be operating in about a year. It's a 5-year program, and I think it'll be really successful. The big issue will be, of course, how do the people get from a way off and get into the hospital? But it's amazing, they sort of work that out. So I think I've sort of outlined why we were doing it. I'll just tell you one quick story, which gave me just a gentle bit of doubt. We're going out to open, and we always open these things. The government's there making speeches about how good they were doing, and really it's it's us that do it all, but everybody gets part of the kudos for doing it. Anyway, we set off at about 5:30 in the morning in the dark, and we had to drive for 6 hours to get to this school. And these are on roads that are very, very, very rustic. You're bouncing around, and you can't put your head back and doze off and then wake up when you get there. Otherwise, you'd probably crash your head against the. Anyway, so as we were going along and on, I said to myself, why in the world are we doing this? This is crazy. Anyway, we came around the corner, and there's the school, 400 people waiting to welcome us and to celebrate in the opening of the school. So I said to myself, well, that's why we do it. Yeah. And that is the furthest we've had to go. So it'll never get any worse than that unless the roads get washed out, which they do often. So I hope that I've got little notes here. I hope I've covered everything. I sometimes get so excited talking about it, I get off track. But so maybe I should pause there, and anybody has any questions, by golly, I'll try to answer them. A perfect presentation.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Just a comment and a connection. My daughter was at Hillfield and she was in the foundation for 4 years of her high school, and she headed it in her grade 12. So.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, there were a lot of people really got involved. I mean, the Glasgow Commission was, I thought, oh, that's amazing. So, thank you very much, please.
And I know more about it today than I did when she was there.
So,
Colin, I have a question, because looking at those pictures, obviously it's a very rustic area. And this may be a totally, well, it is an ignorant question, but is there a concern about wildlife in the area? I mean, where that clinic is, I'm seeing there are no fences or areas to keep wild animals out, or any concerns around that, or even crime in general? Is there any?
well, the clinics particularly are all fenced because we encourage them to put in some gardens, and if they weren't fenced, the cattle would move in. There are no really wild animals. Occasionally we see a monkey, and occasionally we see a rat-like something or other that scoots across the road, but all the wild animals have long since been sort of chased out or eaten. Crime, yes, on the top of the buildings, there's solar panels, and we've had to devise a way to install them that makes it really difficult to take them. So there is a little bit of that we've got to watch for. The solar systems in the clinics are set up so that during the day, of course, the batteries are charged up, and then at night they're used. And we've discovered now that the people are going in during the day to charge their cell phones. And that, of course, wrecks the you think they're very, very clever people. And so we've had to really sort of put our foot down because the batteries wear out and they don't have the money to replace them. And so that's a big issue. But so crime is the only issue.
Colin, do you get any cooperation from any of the Rotary clubs in Lusaka?
Yes. Once, the bridge we built was built in conjunction with the Rotary Club in Lusaka. We didn't really, I think some of the financing came through them, and so that was our only involvement there. So
so Colin, sort of to, I guess, dovetail on Jim's question there, is because one of the things that Rotary does is try to partner like internationally. So our club could potentially partner with a Rotary club somewhere else in the world on a project. And for example, if we were to do that in your community, would there be roles for volunteerism for that Rotary club as well as funding?
we've had the occasional request from Hillfield being one of them.
Okay.
Some of the kids could go over, and it's such a rustic area that I'm not so sure we could ever guarantee their safety. I mean, first of all, it's 3 hours to get to the valley, and then it might be 6 hours or something to get out to it. And if anything went wrong, it's a long haul to get back to the guest house and get out and get medical help. So whenever I described what it would be like to Hillfield, they said, "Oh, okay, we better not try that." So we've had donors come over, and they're safe because they're in our vehicles, but they're not children or yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So and when the donors over, it's not like they would come in and help us build a school. So we don't actually do any of the labor. We go over and celebrate with the people, and we turn over the school to the government, and enjoy the sort of the party that goes on, and then we move on. So we're really representing Canada, but we're not doing any building. And once I was asked, well, I've got somebody that's really good in construction, could they go over? Well, you think about it, the man that does our construction would be spending all his time looking after the young man or the young woman that was helping with the build. So it just hasn't really worked out that well. And we haven't had the volunteers. We had guests, but not volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty rustic. And we went down once in rainy season because this big donor had drilled 6 wells and he wanted to go and see them. And he was on a trip around all over the place. And I said, well, surely you'd like to come to Zambia. Much to my horror, he said yes. So we were there in the rainy season, and we got away into the valley, going to each village where his wells were. And the clouds came in, the thunder started, and it started to rain. And both of us skedaddled out of there. And there were 3 spots on the road that we almost didn't get across. And I knew what that meant. If we couldn't get across one of the little crossings, there was no going back to a Howard Johnson behind us. There was nothing. Anyway, we made it, but it was pretty scary.
Yeah.
So, and we had
Well,
another, oh, sorry.
I have a question. COVID-19, is that having significant impact on Zambia or on that particular area of Zambia?
Yes, they've got it for sure. It looked like the last stats I saw, they had about 2,500 new cases per day. But just like we're having trouble testing here, I think the testing there is few and far between. And so probably it's higher than that. The people we deal with, we asked the manager once what about the COVID-19? And he said, well, I went to school with 8 people, all of them got it and all of them died.
Oh.
So there's no question that it's there. In the valley, of course, it's so remote. And if somebody dies, there really isn't a way to figure out what he died from. If it's COVID, because obviously being in the valley, the religious forms they bury very quickly. And so, and obviously if you're in 90-degree weather, you practically want to bury quickly. So I don't know that there's a lot of cases in the valley because it's so remote, but it certainly, I mean, it's kept Debbie and I, we didn't go last year or the year before, and we've been every year since '98. We're hoping to go next year, but we don't know. It's hard to tell. It's a long flight, and we'd probably be all right in the valley, but boy, as you all know, it's this darn, it's everywhere. Everybody knows somebody that's got it. Families have got it. So, yikes.
So the contributions that we make and you're able to pick up from Hillfield, that goes to the next project that you're going to be involved in.
Yeah. Now the agricultural irrigation thing that we're talking about this year, for example, it costs $400. Actually, it cost $800 per farmer, but frankly, I think that's too much, even though so I've been selling it, if that's the right word, at $400. So Hillfield, as you saw on the screen, I'm hoping will rise to the challenge and pay for half, we'll pay the other half. But we had a lot of, the letter I sent out to everybody, Jim, as you know, was talked about that, and it was $400, and we probably got enough to build 5 or 6 of those plots. So that's 5 times 13 people. And so that was pretty popular. Yeah. So if the Rotary had a particular thing they liked, of course, we would direct the money to that. And it's easy for us to do that. The bridge, of course, is hugely expensive. And anyway, we could do whatever you like.
Mhm. Great.
Okay.
Can you
There-
create world peace?
Big pardon?
Can you create world peace?
Yes. Well,
He's
it's pretty
working on
peaceful.
it. Mhm.
It's pretty peaceful in the valley. So we escaped a piece. Yeah. No, I'm just beyond of course, we did decide to give everybody a water well, so maybe that'll be our next challenge.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, how much does a well cost, Colin?
Well, they were running at about $6,000 a piece. And we were drilling them through the government, the Department of Water Affairs. And they're not drilling anymore. And we're really not drilling anymore either, because we've really done it. We're doing a lot of well rehabilitation because over time the pipes rust or whatever. So we're redoing about, maybe 25 or 30 wells each year. Another job that was absolutely the government's to do, by the way. And of course, they're not doing it. So if we're going to put in a larger irrigation system that requires a really good producing well, we might drill a well to get that big producer. But other than that, we're not really drilling. So.
Okay, so your thing that's going forward now is this agricultural project where you're assisting the individual farmers to irrigate their land properly so that it will enhance their crops that they can
Exactly.
sell.
Yeah, and they produce a cash crop, which, as I mentioned, could sell. Tomatoes, for example, are a very saleable item, and they
Mhm.
kind of grow all year long. And that's the advantage of these drip systems. They'll give the water all year long. And so that's the theory. It's been done by this group before, and now we'll do it. We'll see how it works out.
Yeah, so you figured that each plot would be about $400 Canadian.
Each individual in the plot. So to build the whole plot is actually $8,000.
Oh, $8,000 for a plot. Okay.
Plot with 13 people. But I sort of felt it was a little difficult for me to say to anybody, well, that's $800 per farmer. Well, my goodness, all that is, a bunch of hose and a bucket, surely. But there's training and fencing and all sorts of things. Anyway, so I've just said to everybody, there's $400 will look after one of the farmers.
Okay.
Colin, I apologize if you've mentioned this before, but what's the population that's being served, like the number of people that are being served there in that community?
There's about 18 million in the country. 2 million are in Lusaka, roughly. And in our little valley, the Gombe Valley, is probably 65,000 people. And it's about 65 kilometers in one direction and 30 kilometers in the other direction. And it's right on Lake Kariba. So they do have some lakefront property. And in fact, just a quick aside, we drilled a well and in came the film. And I said, for heaven's sake, the lake, 100 feet away. What's all this about? Well, they said that the lake water is not clean because the animals roam up and down and do their thing. And they said the lake is full of crocodiles and hippos. Mm. And there's stories where 3 children go down to get the water and 2 come back. So that made drilling a well 100 feet from the water pretty effective. Yeah. So.
Okay, so we can talk about this agricultural thing shortly, and possibly see what we can do.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, as you know, the Rotary Club has made a donation for 2021 of $500. So that, in fact, already looks after one of those farmers if you decide that that's what you'd like to do.
Yeah, I think we sent you. I sent something out in 2021. Yeah. Okay.
Now, is Sean still there? I should just put in a quick plug. Sean.
Heyo.
So what about this? Could you at least get them to send a cup of coffee over?
We have a good matching program. I'll see what we can do there. Okay. Seems pretty reasonable.
It's over to you. And just because then of course I think, well, corporations and banks and so on don't do a lot of donating for us because they like to donate in the communities where they're working. Mm-hmm. We have one Canadian project that needs to be supported, and that's a breakfast program up in the Northwest Territories at a little place called Lutzelkey. So cool. we do a breakfast program there every year, and it's very effective. The kids up there are not exactly motivated to go to school, and there was always a snack program at 11, so the kids would all get in there by 11. So our breakfast program starts at 8, and they all get in there for 8, and then they're trapped. So their education goes up a little bit, and of course it gives a balanced diet because otherwise they're eating caribou, fish, and chips from the co-op store. So we give them the balanced diet. Anyway, that's just I forgot to mention that.
Awesome.
Okay, so sorry, but in the interest of time, I'm going to have to wrap up here. Are there any more questions for Colin?
I'd like to thank Colin for the presentation. It was phenomenal, and it gives us an idea of what really has gone on in the Gombe Valley. I was aware of it, but when we like to present requests for funding to members, it's great that they know firsthand of what the projects are. So Colin, thank you very much for the presentation and for preparing this. And I hope Hillfield this year kicks in at the same rate as they did in the past. But we'll keep in touch.
Good. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And thanks everybody for listening. I think I covered everything on my notes. And so that's it. So should I leave the meeting? I guess I should leave the meeting and let.
You can
No.
stay till the end.
You can stay to the end if you like. We have just a few other things to wrap up, but you're welcome to stay with us, Colin, as is Sean, but you can also feel free to go on to other business if you like.
Okay.
And I don't know, Myra, were you on hand to do a thank you, or did Jim take care of that?
No, I wanted to thank you very, very much, Colin, for preparing and delivering that video to us today. I can't remember a time when our club have had such a educational and informative speaker. So on behalf of our club, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart on behalf of all our Rotarians for sharing that with us today.
Thank you, Myra. My pleasure.
Yeah, you're here. Okay, thank you, everyone. So I see Sarah, you're heading out as well. A few people have headed out. So we're going to wrap up. Other